All right, my people. So today we're going to be talking about one of the most important skills you can have as a human, as a person, as a leader, an entrepreneur, a father, mother, parent, brother, sister, child, whatever it is. When you are a human being, you are going to come across conflict. Conflict is one of the most ubiquitous experiences that we have as human beings. It is one of the most difficult experiences that we have as human beings. It is at the root of some of the biggest problems we have as human beings, and there is no way to avoid it. And those of us who are the most skillful, the most tactful, the most able to navigate situations of conflict, to clear up conflict, to resolve or transform that conflict, and create a state of harmony, of peace, or of justice. Those are some of the most skillful and the most effective and impactful people, and also the people who sometimes experience the most peace in their life because they're able to navigate these unavoidable and inevitable challenges that will come our way. So the tools and skills that I'm about to share with you today in this video are going to be very useful in all kinds of contexts. This is a very first principles type of workshop. It's like these are things that if you take these principles, you can apply them in all kinds of different scenarios and contexts, but I'm going to make them so clear to you that you are going to feel like, wow, when a situation like that comes, I know what some steps I can take are. I know how to prepare myself to handle that situation. I know how to orient myself and kind of give myself a lens with which to look at the situation. So let's go ahead and dive right in, and I'd love to share with me in the comments as a message, how did this land for you? Is this beneficial for you? How could we improve or build upon this? And what are some contexts where you think this would come in handy? The first thing I want to do is I want to set you up with a lens with which to view the very experience of conflict. And that is that it is the refinement of your character, and it is making you the best version of yourself. Because I know you've probably already experienced this in your life. Some of the most growth we have, personal growth, spiritual growth, intellectual growth, all of these different things, they come through conflict, okay? And so every single time you have a conflict in your life, this is an opportunity for you to refine your character and to become the very best version of yourself, to actually embody and practice the integrity to the values that are important to you. The second thing is, conflict is that which will allow us to actually create justice and harmony in our families, in our communities, and in our world. So the skills that you have as a conflict navigator are going to be able to allow you to be a much more valuable member of society, be able to have a better relationship with all the people around you, but also help us deal with whatever it is of the various challenges that you want to make a change on and that you want to impact. So the first thing is to always view the opportunity to engage with conflict from a place of how can I improve my character, and also from how can I sharpen this skill that is one of the most important skills that we can have as humans to move forward. That's the first thing I want you to do. I want you to have that attitude. The second thing I want you to do is to understand that conflict is always going to come up in life. Resisting it is futile, right? And so leaning in rather than trying to run away. But also at the same time, nobody likes someone who's always looking for a fight. Right? And it's not about creating conflicts. Like, oh, I'm going to go sharpen my character now. Who wants to fight? Right? It's not like that. Right? Ultimately, we want to avoid conflict, but we don't want to be conflict avoidant. And there's a very big difference. So at the end of the day, what's going to create the most justice, the most truth? And when I say justice, I'm going to define justice in a very specific way. But what's going to create the most truth and harmony and integrity in any situation or relationship? And if conflict is the way there, then that's how we go. And if no conflict and peace and avoiding it is the way there, then hopefully 80% of the time, that's the way we can go. So we're going to talk about these principles. We're going to understand why it's so hard for us sometimes to actually deal with conflict in a good way. And then we're going to have a chance for you to see how you can practice that in your life. So the very first thing I want to do is I want to talk about the idea of justice, because I want to frame justice as the ultimate goal that we are moving towards when we are dealing with conflict. And when I say justice, I'm not talking about some pie in the sky idea. I'm talking about something that's very tangible that you can experience in your day-to-day life, in all of your relationships. But it's also justice that can be scaled out to this macro scale. So when we think about justice, what do we usually think of? Well, on one hand, we often think of this idea of the judge, and he's judging you to see if you are worthy of being free, or if you should go to jail or pay a fine, or whatever it might be. So that's punitive justice, right? Punitive justice is the most common form of justice that we see around us because we live in a system that jumps to punitive justice first. There's a room for punitive justice in all, if you're looking at all the different situations, there's some times where that's going to be the most effective way. But there are other kinds of justice that can be even more effective and are probably more effective more of the time. The second kind of justice you've probably heard of is called restorative justice. And the image you're going to see in your mind there is like, okay, we're trying to restore. Maybe we're having a conversation. What happened? Is everything okay? How did that make you feel? How did that happen? Why? How did we get here? Right? And how can we bring things back to the way that they were? And so restorative justice is starting to catch on. It's starting to be applied even sometimes in the criminal justice or the juvenile justice system. Right? And so restorative justice is definitely a more progressive and more, progressive is not the right word, but more enlightened, let's say, a way of approaching it, because it's not progressive in that it's never been happened before. In fact, many indigenous peoples, and if you look at your ancestral traditions, restorative justice may have been much more common than punitive justice, because punitive justice is very expensive and difficult to do. Right? You have to have giant prisons, and like if you imagine our ancestors, they didn't have these things. So like they couldn't just lock everyone up. They had to find a way to heal and reintegrate people back into society. And now we're talking about transformative justice. Transformative justice is basically when we are trying to look at the very root causes of how did we get here, and not just deal with the situation, but how can we change the root causes so that we don't come back here in the first place. So a very simple way of thinking about this is that breaks your window, right? Punitive justice is say you threw a brick, so you're going to go to jail, or you're going to pay a fine to the government, right, because of that brick, and now or you're going to be lashed or whatever it is. You're going to be punished for doing that, so we can scare people from doing those things again. So you're trying to use the stick to deter people from repeating a certain behavior. Now, restorative justice would say, okay, well, you broke that person's window, so now you're going to fix and pay to fix that person's window or fix it yourself, and maybe you're going to do some community service or something to kind of rebalance the imbalance you created in the community and the society by creating this friction, and you're going to give back to society to try to restore balance. And then transformative to say is, why are you throwing bricks? Why are our windows so sensitive? Like, why are they not stronger? Maybe we need to have, but like, are you hungry? Like, what's going on? Oh, you're starving and you threw the bricks so you could get some bread so you could feed yourself and your family. All right, well, let's look at the root cause. Why are people starving? And yes, let's fix the window and let's reinforce, our safety precautions, but also let's make sure that people aren't starving and feeling the need to be throwing bricks around and robbing each other. And so these different forms of justice are all important and all applicable in different situations. And you'll see that in the conflicts that you have, there are times where punitive, restorative, or transformative may be the most effective way to approach the situation. And we'll also talk about why our neuroscience, our neurobiology, our fight or flight response system, the way that we are wired as humans, sometimes kind of tends towards punitive justice. Often we want revenge, we want vengeance, right? We want, to kind of destroy the threat, the thing that's scaring us or that we feel could harm us or make, our lives less comfortable, easeful, safe, whatever it might be. The thing that is threatening us, we want to remove that threat. And so often that reaction, that gut reaction, is to go to punitive justice. But that's the most violent form in some way or another, and it's obviously not sustainable for us to only use that form. So let's talk about justice a little bit more deeply. I created this definition of justice. It's not the only definition, and I won't even go as far as to say it's the best definition, but I think it's a very useful definition. It's going to be the working definition for this conversation, and I think that it can really transform the way we deal with conflict. So justice is a state of integrity and wholeness that is achieved through accountability, healing, and transformation. I'm going to break this all the way down. Justice, a state of integrity and wholeness that is achieved through accountability, healing, and transformation. When we say a state of integrity, what I mean by that is that we are doing what we say we will do, right? To have integrity is to do what you say we will do, and when you can't do it, you honor the fact that you weren't able to do it, and you try to make it right, whatever make it right means in that situation. Another definition of integrity is being who you say you are, even when no one is looking, right? So when our bodies, our minds, are out of integrity, right, or they're no longer whole, because it's integrity and wholeness. So maybe you got an injury, right? Maybe even sometimes in the legal context, we talk about making it whole. Like, how can we make this whole? How can we restore the wholeness of the situation? So if you get an injury, it's like the wholeness of your health has been compromised. And so when you heal, you're restoring the wholeness of your health, right? Or if someone robbed you, the wholeness of your belongings has been compromised. And restoring your belongings is restoring that wholeness. If there's a conflict or a fight in a relationship, the wholeness, then you can see how that scales out. So justice is a state of integrity and wholeness. So if something has been harmed, if someone has been harmed, if a situation, an institution, a relationship is broken, we are mending it and we're restoring its wholeness. And when we're not being who we say we are, maybe being hypocritical to our values, or we are not acting in a way that's in alignment with integrity, it breaks the trust in the relationship. When someone lies, when someone doesn't show up when they promise that they will, when someone says that they're a certain way, when I say I'm going to be a certain person, I'm going to be a leader and I'm going to help you, or I'm your friend and I'm going to be there for you, and then I'm not, that person is going to doubt my integrity and trustworthiness. So that's why it's so important. And so we achieve that through accountability, healing, and transformation. Accountability is just being count-onable. Right? So if you say you're going to do something, you say you're going to be someone, you're actually reliable, you're count-onable. Furthermore, it comes from the idea of accounting, right? So it's like when you account for something, it's like, well, we're going to say these 3 apples are going to be there, and then we go and we take account. Are the 3 apples there, yes or no? Right? So it's going back and taking inventory. What happened? What were the impacts of what happened? And can we take accountability, meaning count like who did what happened where, what was the problem, who lost what, and now we understand the situation. And then you can balance the accounts, right? You can restore, then that goes into the healing, right? So accountability, healing, and transformation. The healing part, restoration of the wholeness. So you take account, you see what's missing, right? And then you restore what's missing. And if you can't restore what's missing, then you go to transformative. And maybe you go straight to transformative, where it's like, well, why did this happen in the first place? And can we transform the original and underlying causes so that we can avoid these conflicts occurring in the first place? So when conflict, hurt, or harm affects our bodies, right? Maybe we had a fight, right? Or our minds, right? Maybe we had an argument. Or our relationships, or our institutions, our communities, we clean up the mess. Right? And I want you to use this metaphor of a mess. It's like, this is a mess, right? It kind of takes the blame out of the situation. It's like, oh, this is your fault, and you did it. It's like, we have a mess, right? And on this mess, there's my side of the street and your side of the street. There's a side of the street that's my side of the mess. Even if my side of the street is 1% and yours is 99% because it's your fault. Well, when you're pointing a finger, 3 are pointing back at you. Remember that old saying? So we always want to look at this mess and see, how can I clean up my side of the street and support you to clean up yours? And we're going to see what that means in a moment. So, again, when we practice justice, when we enjoin justice, when we work to clear conflict to reach a state of justice, then we can create a sense of safety. People can trust that their lives, their safety, their well-being, their needs are valued and seen and cared for, whether it's in your team at work or your team in your company, whether it's in your community, in your family, in your society as a whole, right? And that's why a lot of the times people, when they're protesting, it's like, well, you said you were going to take care of us. You're our government. You're our governor. You're our leader. You're our representative. And you're not doing that. And we can't trust you anymore. And so now, our relationship is broken and we need to fix it. And we need to show up. Hello, blame, blah, blah, like alarm, alarm, alarm. And that's often what conflict is. It's an alarm to let you know that the state of integrity and wholeness in your relationship has been compromised and needs some. How can we approach justice? We talked about punitive, restorative, and transformative justice in these different ways. Let's talk about some very tangible things that we can do to actually move from a state of conflict or injustice. I mean, if you're having a fight, someone feels like the situation is not just. This is an injustice. We don't talk like that anymore because it's not Shakespearean times anymore. But inside of your heart, it's like, this is not fair. This is wrong. What the heck? Come on, what's going on here? You cut me off, whatever it is. And it feels unjust. It feels wrong. It feels unfair. So we want to move from that state of conflict or injustice to a state of cleared conflict or a state of restored justice. These steps that I'm about to share with you, they are not necessarily linear, right? You don't necessarily always go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But I found that when you skip some of them and you go to the next one without going to the one before it, things can get a little wonky. So I recommend that you at least consider or try going in this order first. And I'm going to show you where sometimes it's interchangeable, but some of them I really think is the place to start, and that's number 1. So number 1, whenever we are trying to deal with a situation of conflict, the first step is to acknowledge the harm, acknowledge the conflict, acknowledge the mess that we are in, and acknowledge the fact that everyone in this situation has an experience, and that experience is probably not very nice, and that it probably sucks for them. Right? So you just want to acknowledge it. I'm not saying it's my fault. I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm not even there yet. We're not at accountability yet. We're not at blame. We're just like, whew, this stinks. This is a mess. Man, this sucks. I'm so sorry this is happening. You don't even need to use the word sorry, because it's like, but it's like, well, now we're in a predicament, right? Just acknowledging it and like sometimes snaps us out of it. It's like, yeah, this is a situation, right? And when you say that, what it kind of does is it takes the attention off of me versus you, and it kind of becomes us versus the problem, right? This is something I learned from the Mosaic Project when I was a youth counselor, and we would talk about this when we talked about, conflict resolution skills for youth, and we talk about instead of me versus you, it's us against the problem. So when you acknowledge the mess, you take that attention and that fight and that energy, and it's like, wow, we're having a conflict. It's not like I'm mad at you. It's like we're having a conflict, right? And now the conflict is its own thing that we're dealing with together. We have a project that we're trying to solve. And I know that sounds a little mushy-gushy sometimes when you're in a fight with someone. It's the last thing you want to do is be on the same team as them. But guess what? One, two heads are better than one. Two, if they're not attacking you and they're instead attacking the problem, you're safer. And three, you're much more likely to clear it up. And most of the time when we have conflict, it's with people we care about. It's not with people we want to cut out of our lives, forever. It's someone that you actually want to get through the conflict so you can get back to being friends or lovers or parents or children or whatever it is the relationship is. Acknowledging the conflict and then acknowledging the experience of the people involved. This can disarm people in such a powerful way. And honestly, in my experience, half the time, maybe even more than half, you do this and the person's just like, yeah, it does, whatever, okay. Just the fact that you acknowledged it and you made them feel seen, right? It's like, you know what, we're having this argument and I can see that it's really having a negative effect on you. It's really stressful for me too. And I'm sorry we're in this situation, and like, I know you have your feeling of how it should have gone. I definitely have my feeling of how it should have gone, and we're mad at each other. And I just wanted to say that, like, it sucks that we're in this situation and you're my friend and I don't want to be in a fight with you. I want to fix this. And then it's like, oh, right, you care about me. Because when I'm in that fight or flight mode, because we're in a conflict, it's like you're the enemy now. If you were my best friend 30 minutes ago and now we're fighting, and it's like my defense systems and all of my trauma and all of my adrenaline and epinephrine that's running through my veins and my heart is beating and my palms are sweating is because my fight or flight mechanism is just taking me to like survival mode. Now I'm in survival mode. Right? So we want to take people out of survival mode. We want to remind them that this is normal. Conflicts occur. They're like, oh yeah, this is a conflict. I've had conflicts before. I've survived conflicts before. Maybe I'm not going to die, right? So that's the first step. The second step is, and this is where we're talking about character and integrity, and we're coming back to that, right? This is not about being coming out as the winner. The winner is the one who has their integrity intact at the other side of the conflict. The winner is the one who can look back at the way that they handled themselves and be proud of themselves. The winner is the person who their integrity shines and their character shines, and it actually makes it more likely that people are willing to trust you and take their defenses off and actually collaborate and solve the problem. So the second step is to take ownership of your side of the street, and wherever you have agency, meaning ability to affect the situation, and wherever you are responsible, meaning able to respond, okay? Now, I know that a lot of the time with conflict and injustice, it's not a 50-50 situation, right? It's rarely exactly 50-50, but it's even more rarely 0-100, right? If we're talking about a child and an adult, and the adult has abused the child, like, there are situations, right, where there's a completely innocent party, right? I was just walking down the street and today you chose violence, like that does happen. But those situations are statistically rare. The majority of conflicts that you've had in your life were situations with people people you actually care about, people you trust, and there was some kind of dynamic, right? And one of the things to do in life is to check and see, am I a kind of person who always believes that I'm the victim of every single situation and everyone's always out to get me? There are people like that in the world, and it really sucks to be that person. It sucks to deal with that person, but it really sucks to be that person. It really sucks because it puts you in that state of like, of everyone's against me all the time, and it's just not empowering. Look, I know sometimes we have real traumas and real things that have occurred to us, and then that can set up that situation and feeling like we're not safe. But the reality is, even if you are 1% responsible, to be a person of integrity is to take ownership of that 1%. Even if it's 0.1%, it's like, man, I should have left this relationship 5 years ago. That's responsibility. Why are you still here? You don't know this relationship's toxic. You don't know that, right? You don't know this person doesn't respond well to this. This person can't handle this level of vulnerability. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's just the very choice to engage when you know a situation is not a workable situation, right? So whatever it is, we want to clean up our side of the street first, and not in a way of like, well, you know what? I should never have even talked to you. I should never have even, we're not saying like, well, I'm taking responsibility for the fact that I ever trusted you because you're a snake, right? That's just more blame, right? It's really like, you know what? I see that I had, I was needing X, Y, and Z, and I was looking for that in the situation, and this was not the appropriate situation for me to be actually looking for that from you, and I'm sorry that I even brought this up, and it's not, again, I actually like the word sorry. People are very sensitive about the word sorry, and you do want to be careful not to take ownership of other people's side of the street, because you can't clean up their mess. There's an invisible force field between my side of the street and your side of the street, and only I can clean up my side of the street, and only you can clean up your side of the street, and we'll talk about that. But there's ways to be sorry that someone's experiencing something without saying sorry for the whole situation, right? So we want to take the lead. We are showing them that it's safe to be a human and to mess up, and that I'm not trying to come out of here like this lawyer, legalistic, like zero fault, it's all your fault, so the insurance claim, you know what I mean? That's not the situation here. Like, I did something, you did more and I did less, or I did more and you did less, whatever it is, but I'm going to own what's mine. Now, what you've done are two things when you do that. One is you've modeled that it's safe to take ownership. It's safe to be accountable. It's safe that this is a situation where that is acceptable, right? That like, oh, we're taking accountability? Well, yeah, I mean, thanks for taking accountability. That you shouldn't have done that. That sucked. Why did you do that? I mean, I really wish you didn't do that, but I'm glad you can at least say that you're aware that you did this, annoying, frustrating, dangerous, whatever it is thing. And you know what? Yeah, I blew up at you, and that was, I was just really nervous and kind of shocked in that moment, and I shouldn't have yelled. I raised my voice. That was not necessary. So, my apologies for that. And I could have given you a heads up. And then now that person feels like they can actually do that. So one is you're modeling it. And two, let's just say when there's a mess and my side of the street is squeaky clean and your side of the street is a freaking mess, well, it's kind of obvious who is the, it's almost like encouraging. It's like, okay, well, now I gotta clean up my side. You know what I'm saying? So that's the other benefit of taking ownership of your side of the street. Now, number three, the third step to creating a sense of justice and clearing conflict and dealing with conflict is to, together or alone, envision and often you want to present or kind of offer up a vision of what would it look like if we restored this wholeness of the situation. What would it look like to make this whole? What would it look like to be back in integrity? What could a win-win-win situation look like? And let's kind of, now that we've acknowledged the situation, right? And I've taken accountability of my side of the situation, and I've kind of invited, maybe you to take your accountability of your side. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't, right? It doesn't even matter if you do at this point. Let me just say, like, maybe there's a way we could come out of the situation where, like, I can get what I need and you can get what you need, or at least I can get the most important things for me and you can get the most important. Maybe it's not going to be perfect for both of us, but then we can, like, kind of walk away from the situation and both of us can get our needs met, right? If there's a situation, where we have shared resources, right, we're both sharing this building, we're neighbors or whatever it is, like, we can't delete each other, and so we're going to have to deal with each other. So let's try and, what if we did this? What if let's try to envision a situation. Now, sometimes, right, you actually want to do this as step two, right? It's like, hey, you know what? We're having a conflict right now, and I'd like to have a conversation where we could both walk away feeling heard, like, okay, I understand what happened for you and you understand what happened for me, and we can kind of figure out what exactly went wrong, where did we go wrong there, and we can actually restore and fix this. Like, I want to fix this. And you can imagine you have a customer and it's not going well, or a client and the product is not doing what it's supposed to do, or you have a spouse, right, and you've had an argument. It's like, babe, I love you and I don't want us to be fighting, and I want to have a good evening together, so, like, why don't we just have a conversation? Like, I'd love to, like, just listen and see, like, how what I said affected you and how that made you feel, and I want to see if there's anything for me to learn from the situation, and so that we can avoid the situation in the future. And I'd love to share a little bit for what's coming up for me, so you can understand me a little bit better and we can understand each other. And now you've kind of set the tone of the conversation, and you've invited someone into a conversation of healing and fixing rather than a fight for winning and defeating. So sometimes that can be step 2 instead of step 3. Clean up your side of the street first, then support that person or others to clean up their side of the street in that order and with that energy. Ooh, Mazin, you're asking for a lot. You're asking, I'm a human being, Mazin. Oh. No, it's important, okay? You want to clean up your side of the street first for a few reasons. One is, when you take accountability and actually fix and deal with whatever's on your side of the street, you are now qualified to be the person telling other people what they should be doing. You ever meet someone who's like, well, you should have done this and da-da-da, and they haven't dealt with their whole side of the situation? How annoying is that? Do you want to listen to that person? I know I don't. But if they're like, hey, you know what? I shouldn't have done that, and I went ahead and I already fixed all of my part, and I've already restored all of it, and I want to hear your side of the situation and see if there's anything I missed. And I'd love to, I know you don't want to be in fights. I know you're not trying to hurt my feelings. So like, why don't we find a way that we can communicate with each other so that we don't get into these arguments? Or like, I know that you're not trying to hurt, to do, but you keep doing that. We keep having the situation where you say things that make me feel this way, or that you say things and it derails the meeting. Like, can we kind of talk about different strategies that we can implement, right? You're now helping this person to clean up their side of the street, and that is step 4. After we have cleaned up our side of the street and they've cleaned up their side of the street, notice we've gone now all the way through restorative justice. We've restored the situation. Is there a way that we can examine the underlying conditions and see how did we get here in the first place? And is there anything that we can put in place, preventative and transformative measures, to avoid this mess recurring in the future? Why don't we come up with some agreements for our team, right? What are some things that we can all just agree to so that moving forward, when we have conflicts, this is how we deal with it? Why don't we, every month, we have a feedback conversation where we just can like air out if there's any challenges or grievances that we're dealing with, and how can we resolve them as a team before they kind of build up. So if you've been finding this valuable, I want to actually share with you a free tool that I've created. It's a worksheet that allows you to prepare yourself to engage in a situation of conflict. And you can actually share this with the person that you are in conflict with, so that both of you can prepare for that conversation and kind of take a chance to take inventory. How am I feeling? What's going on for me? What's really important to me? Like, what am I trying to get out of the situation? What is the most important thing for me, so that like I'm not fighting over the crumbs, but I'm actually like really focusing on the most important priority. And then it provides you a step-by-step process to work through that conflict with that person. And it also provides a process that you can use to bring in a third individual to act as a third-party mediator for that conversation. And so this is a process that I've shared with organizations all over the world. They've been able to implement this in their businesses, in their nonprofits, in their movements, in their activist groups, in order to deal with the conflicts that keep coming up again and again and again. And it allows them to actually deal with those situations in a much more graceful and much more effective way. So please follow the link that you will see below in the comments, and you will be able to get that tool for free. And the next conversation we're going to be having is about feedback. And you're going to see that there's a very big and important relationship between feedback and conflict. In a way, conflict is like dealing with it once it's become a problem, and feedback is kind of like releasing the pressure valve along the way, so it doesn't even build up to the level of conflict happening in the first place, because we're fixing and addressing those problems before they even come to that level. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe, do all the things. Now I'm saying all the YouTube stuff. It's great. So please do support this channel, and I would love to see you back here again. Peace. Salam.